Your Town Matters is funded by the Government of Canada through the Local Journalism Initiative and supported by Cactus Media, Canada's independent community television association.
I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Your Town Matters. My guest today is the Mayor of Manan, Bonnie Morse. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today, Bonnie.
Well, thank you guys for being here today.
And I say guest, but I'm your guest. We're here on the island in the council chambers.
Yes, it's always good to have people come visit from the island, and I think we're having a little camera upgrade, so hopefully people will see the results of that too with our council meetings going forward.
It's always, we had a nice day for a ferry ride, but I understand there have been some complications with the ferry service over the course of this winter. Can you elaborate on what you've experienced as an islander?
Sure. So, we recognize the ferry, it's a piece of machinery and there's always going to be mechanical issues, but we've had the unfortunate situation over the past 2 months that we've had 3 breakdowns essentially in a very short time period. And they were more significant breakdowns. I think, as islanders, we expect that you're going to miss a trip every now and then, but we're talking multiple trips, like for the duration of a day. 2 of those happened on a Sunday, which for the economy isn't necessarily, one of the bigger travel days. But we are very fortunate. We have a lot of sports teams. We did the numbers here a while ago. We think maybe even up to half of the kids in school are participating in either basketball or hockey. Like, it's really taken off. But that means a lot of travel for a lot of teams and a lot of parents. So the first breakdown, we ended up with over half of the over 10% of the population of Manan was stranded on the mainland. There were over 300 people just because of the number of sports teams that were traveling. It took 2 ferry crossings to get everybody home, but because it took so long to have the ferry repaired and back online, the ferry made it crossing from Black's Harbor at 9:30 in the morning, and it didn't make another one till 9 o'clock at night. So if you've got 9 and 10-year-olds, getting home at 10:30 at night is late, but if you're not getting home till 2 in the morning, which is when the second trip made the crossing, that's a really long day for kids. And I have to give a shout out to, I think it was Hampton School had a team that was actually stranded on Manan for the same duration of time. So being stranded on Manan till 10 o'clock at night is not ideal either, but they were really good sports about it. They hung out at the school, they hung out at the parking lot, and I think they had an adventure of a day. But when you talk about, parents who have their kids in school, there's a whole other layer of expense participating in sports on Manan that mainland teams don't have the same level of commitment or the same level of cost, I think is probably the best way to say that. If your kid is playing a game in St. Andrews at 1 o'clock, for example, you're getting up and leaving home by, 6:15, 6:30 in the morning to make your reservation. You're going to the mainland, you're waiting around till your game at 1 o'clock, and then you're catching the 5:30 ferry home to get home at 7 o'clock at night. And so when you start doing that weekend after weekend, there's a huge commitment that people have to do that. And so then when you have the ferry breaking down in the middle of it and now you're on the mainland, maybe you decide not to come home, you've got the added cost of a hotel room, you've got added meals. It's just a whole other level of complication. And so it happened one Sunday, and then it happened 2 weeks later on another Sunday. And I think the frustration level by the second one, people were just, it was a lot for people to take because it's the same teams that are traveling and happening to them again and again. So one of the things we've talked about, I feel like I've rambled here a little bit, but one of the things we've been talking about with both DTI and Coastal is the need to have the Manan 5, which is our summer ferry, to have that in a readiness mode so that in the winter, if we have a longer term breakdown like this, it's able to get back online faster. During the second breakdown, they started the process on the 5, but got the adventure back online sooner. So when it broke down the third time, the 5 actually made a crossing that day because it was ready. And I think that that shows for us how important it is to have that ferry ready so that we don't have a 12-hour break in service to the island. And we don't have hundreds of people stranded on the mainland, which is essentially what happened for 12, 16 hours or more. You know, when you think of a community on the mainland, if you lost complete access to everywhere else, to your transportation system for that long, I think there'd be a lot of upset people and a lot of concern. And Grand Manan's no different. And that's really one of the things that we're talking about here is, you know, we deserve reliable transportation. And that's one of the things that we're looking for.
And one of the solutions would be to have that 5 ready at all times.
Absolutely. And I think for Grand Manan, what we've seen over the last 5-10 years is our population has continued to grow. We were up 10% in the last census, and we've had more people move to the island since then. But we've also lost services on the island, like the dentist, like the bank. So with more people who are requiring to travel for things that they didn't used to, we're seeing that this capacity on the ferry, it's running full or fuller a lot more frequently than it used to. So last year we had an increase of 3 weeks. We're hoping that the same thing is going to happen this year again. But really, when you look at the numbers and the stats on the ferry, we need more capacity, whether it's through additional crossings, and ultimately, if the time has come, we need to start talking about a new ferry. We've started those conversations with DTI, but it's a long process because it's a big investment, which we get. But the Grand Manan 5 is 34 years old. So by the time you get through the process, we're reaching the end of the usable life of that ferry without a significant reinvestment in it potentially. So those are the conversations that we're having. But I think sometimes on Grand Manan, the ferry is such an inherent part of who we are and how our daily lives go that it's hard to understand what a breakdown in the ferry, what that actually means. You know, it means that you're stranded on the mainland with 3 kids in a car for 6 hours sitting in a parking lot. These are not good situations, and so I think we need to talk about how we can mitigate some of those things going forward.
And before winter starts too, you have the refit every couple of years with the Adventure, which can further complicate transportation as the ferry gets busier. As you said, with these services leaving the island, there was one day in October, I went to book my ticket the night before, not thinking about the Adventure being not in service, and it was full.
And that's very common, particularly when the Venture, as we said, is in dry dock. But it happens, from probably the 1st to mid-May until the Grand Manan 5 picks up the supplemental season. You have to be very strategic. If you know you're traveling on a ferry that is potentially busy, you need to make sure you have your reservation because you're not going. And so if you have a dentist appointment, if you know you need to get to the bank to do something, you need to make sure you've got those reservations. And it's challenging sometimes if you don't plan your week out weeks in advance to say, oh, I want to travel 3 days from now. I need to make sure that I've booked my time.
And this is where I have to shout out Andrea Anderson-Mason, who gave me her pass to the island that day.
Yep, I didn't realize that you could trade them, but yes, it's very handy to have that capacity. And I do think I have to say, a big shout out to the Coastal Transport crew who got the 5 ready and on the run that day. There is a tremendous amount of work to shift everything that you need to operate one ferry onto the next, whether it's kitchen supplies, getting the ferry up and running. Like there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into that. There's a lot of work that goes into at the ticket office with, the ladies who are there trying to juggle people in their reservations. And over in the booth in Blacks Harbor who are answering, the unhappy people who are pulling up sometimes saying, you can't go to Grand Manan because the ferry's broken down, you're going to have to wait. I mean, it can be a very thankless job sometimes, but we do appreciate what they've done. And it's absolutely not about their service, it's just about the fact we need more space than what we have right now.
And further complicated, again, you mentioned a lot of services. Bank, when Scotiabank closed, what that did to islanders having to leave. Sometimes you have appointments that can't be easily rebooked.
Right. If you've been waiting for an appointment with a specialist or you're on a cancellation list and they call and say, can you be here tomorrow? Your answer is, well, maybe I've got to check and see if I can get a ferry ticket first. Like, it's just a whole different level of thought process that I think we as islanders, we just do because that's how we do it, that I don't think is always well understood. Medical professionals in St. John in particular are great because they understand when you say you're coming from Grand Manan, they'll try to book you in those appointments, but sometimes they just can't. And if you're waiting to get in somewhere, you need to take advantage of it when you can. but you need to be able to get on the ferry to get there to do that.
And this is a great transition to talking about a couple islanders who are bringing services to the island. We all know in southwest New Brunswick, at least, the struggles that islanders have been through in recent years. But Lauren and Mike have brought a few services to the island with the hopes of also bringing a credit union too in the near future. How is the Health and Wellness Center going? We were there with you for the opening in the fall.
It's going great. You know, big shout out to them and their team down there. They've just done an incredible job down in that building. They're still in conversations with the credit union. There's hopefully going to be some movement there. But in the meantime, you know, they've had dental hygienists. They've had a dentist who has come, so now you can do Invisalign, have dental, you know, checkups. They can do basic fillings. There's still some things you'd have to go to the mainland for, but we're seeing an increase in those medical services again. They've had a really great response from anybody who's been here, like people who've come just to test it out, and they're booking out into October and into 2025 for dental appointments at this point, is my understanding. They have massage therapists, physiotherapists who are coming like on a regular basis, and they're filling up their appointments, which is great to see. I think there's some discussion around an optometrist and a denturist, which I think are an audiologist. Those are all things that I think, particularly within the senior population, would be great to be able to access those services here versus having to go to the mainland for them. And I think, you know, to avoid that level of travel with some of the things that we've just talked about, to be able to drive down the road, like, to me, that's been the great thing, is anytime I've been in, talking to the people who are like, oh, this is good. And it's been a lot of seniors that I've seen that have been there. Younger people too, but I've talked to the seniors who've been sitting there waiting, and they're like, this is good. I don't have to find a family member to take me away. I can come and do this myself. So I think just to have those things back on the island has just been a really great thing to happen. And it's even where we live, it's rural, and my dentist is there once a week. And it is great to have them come to you. If there's anyone watching right now who might have a service, how do they reach out to perhaps offer coming to the island once every week or two? I feel like we should be flashing an 800 number now below my. Reach out to me here at the village office. You can reach out to Coast Health and Wellness. They're on Facebook. If you reach out to, we've had other people reach out to members of Rotary. We will put you in contact with the right people. But certainly, if there's anybody who's looking to have a couple days of work on Grand Manan and a little bit of vacation maybe on the side, it's a great opportunity for people, particularly with summer coming. So
I'm happy that we're talking about another service coming back to the island, which is the air ambulance service, the Medevac. Can you tell us a little bit about it? I know it's on the radar for September.
So the announcement is that by September there will be a plane on the island, and we're hopeful that that's going to happen. We're having calls bi-weekly with A&B and Voyager, going through the checklists of things that need to happen between now and then. They've got a really big checklist of things that need to happen. So, you know, we're hopeful that things are going to go along. You know, they're trying to get, you know, the planes in place, the pilots in place, housing, you know, all of those things have to happen. So they're working on those things, and anything the village can do to help. You know, this is obviously a big thing to have the service back on the island. So we're hopeful and looking forward to September being here and having the service back.
Obviously, affordable housing is an issue across southwest New Brunswick, yes, across Canada really, but in rural parts of the world it's sometimes harder to find a developer willing to take on that. How are you addressing that on the island, especially with population growth being what it is?
Yeah, that was one of the big disappointments this winter. You know, like a lot of municipalities in this region, we applied for the Housing Accelerator Fund, which was designed to help municipalities, you know, be able to provide some supports towards affordable housing in particular, but all types of housing really. And so for a rural community like Grand Manan, we don't have town water or town septic, those things. Everybody's on wells and their own septic fields, so there's no infrastructure or anything like that. So to be able to give people a leg up, to be able to come to the island, you know, we're really looking for some different programs like that. And so to be not successful in getting that money, like other communities in the region, was very disappointing. And, you know, we've reached out, we're looking for some discussion on, you know, what the rationale was, what was there something lacking in the application, what more, should we have said, could we have said. But I think it's hard when, you have a population like ours that is increasing. It is young people, it's young families that are moving here. It's not just retirees, not that that's a bad thing. But, we have a very diverse population, and we have, an economy that's growing. But because of where we are geographically, you're not commuting to Grand Manan from the mainland. Like, we really are our own unique remote situation, that if we don't have the housing here, people can't come here. They can't live here and they can't stay here. And we're coming into the time of year where, people are they've lived in different places for the winter. Those places are summer rentals or summer homes. And so now we're back into that crunch of people trying to find places to live. And I think just to have some sort of stability in the rental market here, that you have a long-term rental, that it's a year-round, that you can stay here when you come with your family. We had a French teacher that was teaching French at the school from Ontario till November because there was no place for him to live. That's not ideal for an education situation, and I think it's indicative of where we are with the housing market on the island.
You're talking about the young population on the island, and I think something that obviously speaks to that is that this summer you will have a splash pad and eventually a pool in the years to follow opening. Yep. I just saw the designs and they're beautiful. I will be over. Can you tell us a little bit about where it will be and what you anticipate?
Sure. So anybody who's been to Grand Manan, to what was our pool up at Victoria Park, that will be the area where the splash pad will go, and eventually the pool down the road in a few years, hopefully. We had a group of young parents who approached council a few years ago and they wanted to start fundraising for a splash pad. We were able to access some funds as well. So through their fundraising, we have the money, we have the equipment purchased, we've had a groundbreaking for the splash pad. And by June or July, hopefully summer, I'm not going to get too specific with a date, but we'll have the splash pad up there. And Victoria Park's a bit of a recreation hub for us here on the island. We have a baseball field that the Little League, kids use that for the summer. We have an outdoor basketball court, pickleball court, and a tennis court, as well as a playground. So having the splash pad and pool there, I think it just makes a nice little recreation center. So your kids can be on the playground and at the splash pad going back and forth, or there's things there to do. So it makes a nice little center there, and we're really excited to have it open this summer.
There is really no place like Grand Manan in the summertime. In wintertime too, you experience storms like more extreme than I would say the rest of us at times. How did you fare this winter when so many of us did see a few devastating storms really wreak havoc on our area?
So the December 18th storm didn't hit Grand Manan nearly as hard as it did the mainland. We were very fortunate that we had power back within a few hours. And, I've talked about this to other communities across the region, but we have public calls of public safety during the storms. I have to give a big shout out to them. They get the mayors and CAOs, emergency personnel from across the region. We have morning calls after each of the storms, during the hurricane in September and then again December and the 2 January storms. And so that Tuesday morning to the December 19th, when we all got on the call, the only place that had power was Grand Manan, which was it was really shocking to me that we had power at that point. So we're very fortunate to have the generator down in Ingalls Head that can provide backup, and it did provide backup for Grand Manan, Campbell, and Deer Island from Tuesday till Friday that week. So without that, those island communities would have not had power. So as part of the New Brunswick energy strategy, one of the things that was identified was replacing the generator that's down here in Ingalls Head. So for us on the islands, that's a critical piece of infrastructure that it does need to be replaced. We can't just have it taken out for events precisely like the December 18th storm. So then we get to January, and those 2 storms hit at the high tide. And we don't often have storm surge on Grand Manan, but we did during both of those. And it was really, it was amazing to see how high the water did come during those storms. I know you guys had footage from the mainland, but going to the wharf and seeing the water like breaking over the top of the wharf, that normally, there's, quite a distance from the top of the water to the top of the wharf. and the waves are crashing over the top of it. You see pictures of houses and people have rockweed and seaweed like 6-8 feet up their lawns. That just normally doesn't happen. So it certainly we were hit. It could have been a lot worse. But I think what it did is it really brought home for us, we need to start talking about, how we are protecting the coast of the island, because that is critical for our infrastructure. If you haven't been to Grand Manan, most of our roadway runs down the eastern coast of the island. It's very low compared to the western part of the island and very exposed to the water. So those are some of the conversations that, we need to start having with DTI is, how do we plan for 20 years, 50 years down the road for storms? How do we make sure that our roads are protected going forward? So it was, I think, we were fortunate that it wasn't worse than what it was, but it was also a good reminder that that we are getting more storms and we do need to be taking precautions.
I think a few trips ago when I was here, we were talking about a debris pile at North Head. Yeah. And since then, I could see the Warf today driving over. Last time it was smaller, but it's much smaller today. What's the update on where that stands?
So the project's going forward. They're continuing to work on site. I'm not sure timelines for completion just yet, but it is good to see things are moving again up there, and hopefully, we'll see the wharf be completed for the fishermen and aquaculturists who use North Head that need that piece of infrastructure, and also so that the construction is done in North Head and that community can go back to normal life again.
I'm looking forward to having some summertime activity out on the decks at Post Office Pizza and the cafe next door.
Absolutely,
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing like North Head in the summer, so it'll be great to have that project done.
Almost this time, I think it was maybe 2 weeks from now last year, you and I were in the CHCO studio doing a 5-hour, what turned into a 5-hour telethon for Swallowtail Lighthouse. It's been one of the things I'm most proud of at CHCO that we've been a part of with Islanders for over a year now. Can you talk a little bit about, I know in August we'll be having a celebration for the refurbishment of the Lighthouse and Lightkeeper's House.
So I don't have a lot of details other than I hear in August there will be the grand reopening. But I think for all of us, just to have the project done, we so appreciated CHCO being involved. The Lightkeepers Society who did the fundraising, who raised the money to do the repairs to that lighthouse. When you look around and you see other lighthouses that maybe don't have that same volunteer support behind them, it's impossible to imagine Grand Manan without coming around Swallowtail on the ferry and it being there. So to know that it's there, it's been restored, it's just a huge thing for the community. So I think it'll be really exciting this summer to see the great unveiling, the reopening, and we're really looking forward to having that happen.
I was very excited to get my emails from Ken Ingersoll and Bart Myers telling me we're doing this August. So we will definitely be there.
That was basically my reaction. It's like, just tell me what you need, guys, and we'll make it happen, because they certainly deserve all the credit in the world for spearheading that project.
Obviously, summer, like in our part of the world, is one of the busiest times. We all get ready for the busy tourism season. How are you preparing on Grand Manan, and what are you looking forward to going into the warmer months?
I think, we're starting to see the restaurants are starting to schedule their openings, so that's always a good sign that spring and summer is coming. I think we're just looking forward to another summer on Grand Manan. Hopefully good weather. We've been very fortunate. We've had great weather and great tourism seasons. Even during COVID, during the lockdowns, we still had a very active and vibrant tourism industry here. We're very fortunate we have repeat visitors. People come to Grand Manan, they fall in love, and they keep coming back, which is great. So it's good to see those familiar faces. It's good to see new people coming to the island as well. So one of the things we're hopeful by summer, and we'll see how things go, is we're moving our visitor information center. It has been here inside the community center, but last year the City of St. John donated the lighthouse that used to be down on the boardwalk in St. John. So we've been doing some repairs to it, and we're hopeful by summer that will be up and operational and will be our new VIC center here on Grand Manan. So if you're on the island, stop by and see the lighthouse in its new location.
I didn't even put it together. I think that's what I saw outside.
That's what you saw out in the parking lot, yes. So I think we're going to reside it. I think Swallowtail may have donated their shingles from out there. So it will look a little bit like our big lighthouse, but I think it will be a really cool addition to, and very iconic for a visitor information center, easily identifiable. And, you know, the advantage of having it, while down here we're a little bit away from the ferry, we do have access to public washrooms. We have a market that's here every Saturday, so it is sort of in the center of the island, and it's a good location for people to stop if they need to, you know, have a little break. We'll hopefully have some picnic tables. Pavilion will be done by summer, and it will be a nice area for people to stop and visit.
Well, I look forward to coming back in summer, but I always love this time of year because you can still get your pie at CHCO,
Yes.
visit Newton's, and it feels like the island's all yours just for a few more weeks before it gets busy.
We always like this time of year. You know, you kind of get to see everything before it does get busy, but it's always good to see that activity come in the summer too, and everybody's out and around, and people are here enjoying the island.
Well, thank you, Bonnie, for sitting down with me today and for hosting us at the council chambers. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you guys for coming.
My guest today has been the Mayor of Grand Manan, Bonnie Morse. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Your Town Matters.